Serious, what are some scary, horrifying, creepy things that have happened to you, or in general, that could have a plausible explanation, but still freak you out? I lived in one of the oldest apartments in the town I was living in. Couldn't sleep one night, but eventually I must have dozed off as I started having an incredibly vivid dream of myself laying in bed. Everything the exact same as in reality, except my door opened, and a creepy old lady started ominously walking towards me. I woke up and freaked out. I always lock my door, but just to be sure, I went and checked it. It was unlocked. Used to do hospice at home care. People who are actively dying see shit. Thing is, it's almost always friends or family who have passed before, angels or demons. Never, like, a random dog, or a kid they never met, or a plate of spaghetti. The rational explanation, it's cultural. Even if you're not a believer, everyone hears stories about white light, and beckoning relatives and angels and demons. So that's what people see when their oxygen levels drop, and their bodies are shutting down, and they start hallucinating. The explanation that scares the fuck out of me, someone with one foot in this world and one in the next can see things I can't. The scariest one was a man who seemed totally lucid. Normally dying people don't make tons of sense and will occasionally say something like, "My son is here, do you see him?" and then back to nonsense. This guy was otherwise in his right mind, except he was telling me about his wife, who was sitting at the end of his bed, and she had dyed her hair again, despite him always liking her natural grey, but at least she had on that blue dress she always looked so good in. He had a perfectly rational conversation with her about how he missed her, but the doctor said he would see her soon and not to worry. He wasn't scared. He knew he was a very old man and no one lives forever. Part of me thinks he was just having a different experience of death/hallucination. Part of me thinks he was fucking with me. Part of me believes she was there. I just couldn't see her, because I'm not dying. I always worried one day I would be able to see what they saw. What then? Me and my family woke up in the night to the sound of manic laughing. Like evil manic laughing. All of us heard it. It was coming from the attic. My dad, being not superstitious or scared of anything, was white as a sheet. He pulled the attic ladder down and went up to find an old dairy cow alarm clock that had faulty sound randomly going off. Don't believe any supernatural activity made it go off. Just hearing a manic evil laugh in the middle of the night from the attic made us shit ourselves. Context: my grandfather was a truck driver and taught me everything I know about driving, especially in snow. I used to work at a drugstore and one night, I was closing another store in our chain, and we had a snow squall that unexpectedly dropped a few inches of snow in our area. I wasn't very familiar with the area, and I had my mum's car, so I wasn't used to the car either. The snow was still coming down, and I couldn't see, so I was creeping home and panicking as I saw cars spinning out all around me. All of a sudden, I saw a light in my passenger side view mirror, and I turned my head, and sitting in the passenger seat, plain as day, I saw my dead grandfather. I heard him say he knew that I wasn't freaked out by a little snow, and then I heard his voice rattling off all the things he taught me about driving in the snow. I looked back towards the road, and then he was gone. It was a calming experience. When I saw him, it was more "Okay, Pop's here, I'm okay," instead of "OMG, you're supposed to be dead, WTF," and I stopped panicking and got home without a problem. It was most likely just my brain/eyes/whatever playing tricks on me to get me to stop panicking, but to this day it still freaks me out. One time, I drove back to college after Christmas, but before the winter break was over, so I was the first of my roommates to get back to the house we were renting. Our house was in a pretty isolated spot on the outskirts of a town in upstate New York. I pulled into the driveway behind the house, went to the trunk, and grabbed one of my bags, and then ran inside, because I had to use the bathroom so badly. I'd been on the road for over 5 hours. I was inside the house using the bathroom for maybe 5 minutes. Afterwards, I went back outside to get the rest of my stuff from the car, and there were footprints in the snow all around it. Now, as I said, I was alone in the middle of nowhere. The only set of footprints should been mine from where I'd gotten out of the car on the driver's side, walked to the trunk, and then walked to the back door. Yet now, there was another set of footprints circling the car, and then leading into the woods at the back of the property. It appeared that the footprints had originally come from the woods as well. I had left my trunk open when I was inside because I'd assumed I was alone and nothing had been taken. But someone had seen me arrive, come out of the woods, circled my car, and returned to the woods. I grabbed the rest of my shit, locked my car, ran into the house, and locked the doors. TL. Doctor, there was someone watching me from the woods. Moved into a cottage on the mountain. My backyard was a tree line. The moon lit everything so beautifully well, it hardly seemed like night at all. I began having recurring dreams. It was the same dream every single time. In my dream I would see myself laying asleep in my bed, and then it switched from third person view to first person view. In the dream, I awoke to a whispering female voice. The thirst hit me. In the dream it was unbearable. I would climb out of bed, open the French doors, and head to the kitchen sink to get a glass of water. As I neared the sink, the voice would get louder and louder, but I still couldn't make it out. It was as if it were a foreign language, but not one that I had heard before nor since. Then, standing in my kitchen and looking out the window right above the sink to the tree line in my backyard well lit by the moon's light, the voice suddenly became clear. She said the devil is in the woods. At this point a shadow darted quickly behind the tree line. I would then wake up from my dream, standing in my kitchen in the exact spot that I was in the dream. This happened almost every week for the entire duration of time that I lived in that house. It also always happened close to or right at 3 AM. I remember one time as a child, I was home on a Saturday morning. For a bit of context, back then, my mom would usually go into work on Saturday mornings and be home usually by 12 PM. Now back to the story. I was sitting on the couch watching TV. The time started approaching 12, which meant that my mom was almost home. I very vividly remember hearing a car door close, hearing the car lock, and my mom walking into the house calling my name. When I got up to go greet her, there was no one there. Still creeps me out. I suffer from insomnia. When I sleep less than 2 hours in 3 days I start hallucinating, and I'm completely unaware I'm hallucinating. Once, I was about to lay in bed and found myself sitting in the living room in the dark. I know I lost consciousness and walked there, but I can't help to think I teleported. When I was younger my older cousin lived with us for a bit because she was having behavioral problems at home. My parents had to go at night to pick someone up from the airport, so they left my brother and I with her. My brother and I were both in bed in my room at this point. I think it was a school night, and she was up in the other room doing homework or something. But she finished up, so she comes into my room to lay down with us. But as soon as she opens the door our house alarm starts going off. She quickly shut the door and come over to me to tell me to be quiet before going back to hold the door closed since it didn't have a lock. My brother, who's older than me by a year, then woke up very confused about what was going on. So the alarms going off, we're all scared out of our minds and we can't even call for help because her phone was taken away and we were too young to have one. Our only option is to get to one of the landlines, one in the kitchen and one in my parents' bedroom. So we all get ready and at the same time we all run to my parents' room and lock their door. My cousin checks their bathroom and closet to make sure no one is hiding in there before calling my parents to let them know what's happening. They say they are only 2 minutes away, so don't worry. But let me tell you, those were the worst 2 minutes of my life. After all is said and done, we find out through the alarm company that the window in my parents' room is what tripped the alarm, and that's the room we moved to. To this day my parents are convinced she was just trying to sneak in a boyfriend or something, but I'm certain someone was trying to rob the place or worse, and got scared off by the alarm because of how completely terrified my cousin looked. TL. Doctor, at home with my bro and older cousin, alarm goes off, move to other room to get to phone. Turns out alarm was set off by window in that room. Personally, I've had an extremely strange experience and I don't know whether to chalk it up to my 12-year-old brain at the time, or if it actually was of a paranormal nature. My best childhood friend used to live in this house that was technically 2 houses merged into one. Both were very old. The first night that I ever slept over, he told me about how a woman who lived in one of the houses lost her mind one day and drowned her children in a basin in the back many years ago. It was around 4 AM, and I woke up in the middle of the night needing a drink of water. I came out of his bedroom, passing the staircase that leads to the second floor on my right, and walked out into the kitchen. On my way back to his room, for some reason I stopped dead in my tracks at the foot of the stairs, which I hadn't really been looking at in my haste to make it back to his room. I turned my head to look at them, and instead of a staircase leading up to the second floor there was a set of stairs going downwards on an intense angle into what looked like nothingness. It was pitch black. I stood there for what felt like 20 minutes, just gazing into this abyss that was before me, that wasn't there before. My brain didn't even register it as strange. That's when I heard an ear piercing. I mean, it sounded like it came from inside of my head. Woman's voice screamed no. Needless to say, I booked it back to his room and I haven't really said anything about it since it happened. The weird thing is that I can remember it like it was yesterday, even though so many years have passed, and I've probably forgotten about more important events since then. Just thought I'd share.